So in this video, what I want to show is how to wrap the side of a sedan with one horizontal panel. And for me, it might look, especially if you're a beginner or intermediate, as wow, it's a giant side of a car, very tough, really hard, I don't want to do it. I'd rather do it in vertical pieces. But I think once you see this video, you're going to see actually horizontal is the way to go. Why? For me is it eliminates registering, and registering is actually very tough for vertical panels, especially if you're working with aggressive film. Again, for me, also a horizontal panel is once you get it set up, especially with two people, is a really quick way to wrap. Straightforward, get it on. So for me, the trick to wrapping horizontal is seen in sections. So for me, you got a fender, a door, and the back. You also got your handles, which are taken off. Great. Mirror taken off, so this makes it flat. So I highly recommend taking off the hardware, especially door handles and mirrors, if you can. Then it's all about getting everything lined up and registered. So this is where you want to take your time and make sure you get the right placement. Very important. Then you want to set up your temporary hinge, release the backing paper, and then set up your permanent hinge. This is exactly, we're going to wrap this exactly the way the hood was wrapped. Set up your hinge. So where's your hinge here? Okay. For me, in the hood, it was right in the middle. You work left to right. But for me, on a side of a sedan, your hinge is here. Right now, Carlos and I are going to set up one long horizontal hinge right here, right above the door handle area. Because again, I never like to work up into a recessed area. I always like to work down. So for here, we're going to lock it in here. Once we lock it in here, again, no different than the hood, what we're going to make is 4 triangles. I'm going to pull this way. Carlos is going to pull this way. I'm going to pull this way. Or Carlos is going to pull this way, and I'm going to pull this way. So by pulling in 4 triangles, no different than the roof, hood, trunk, is by pulling in these directions, it makes the whole side of the car flat. And you'll see it, and if you have never seen triangles before, this is where I think it's going to knock your socks off, because this is what saves me huge amounts of time and creates quality. Is by making this whole side flat, we're instantly going to rock and roll. So once we get that set up, great, because then we can just kind of work together, squeeze everything on, start cutting everything out. So again, we're going to process through this, and obviously what we talked about earlier is this the right car? No. So again, this was designed for a Ford Taurus. This is a Buick. So are the graphics going to fit here correctly? Probably not. Okay. But what I loved about Steven's design, I think this is really important for anyone out there designing, is he didn't put any really important elements on this design in critical areas. Like this Wrap Institute now is kind of in a safe spot top to bottom. It's not critical. It's not really close to any type of edge. The Avery Dennison logo is centered on the door, but it has enough play top to bottom where you can shift it. Same thing with a Muto here. So for me, that's really important. But we also have to think about the other side, where the other side was made more difficult because you got this transition green line that has to match up with the passenger side. So we're going to have to make sure that this lines up here. That could be difficult because then the Wrap Institute might get cut off by the backlight. But what you'll see in the video, and I'll talk about this on the voiceover, is how we're going to make this line up without actually having to think about the big panel, just more on this section here, which I think that's called seen in sections based on print and not vehicle. So again, what you're going to see is this is a driver's side with a horizontal panel. Actually, it's the easiest way to wrap a car, straightforward and simple, and it actually reduces production time because there's no need to trim the panels on a cutting table and bring it down. Just basically take the backing paper off, rock and roll. So let's get to it.
So first thing Carlos and I do is just bring the panels to the car. Everything's been prepped and clean, and we're just going to try to get it in position, get a rough idea of where it's going to go. So we're not getting super precise here. We have lots of magnets on hand. I have like 3 or 4 pairs in my tool kit. Carlos does as well. So again, more magnets the better, even though there's 2 of us on here. So again, I want to make sure that it fits at the top. This is a 54-inch panel, so it's not going to reach the bottom. And then I just want to we're just communicating now, how does it fit on the back? Does the Wrap Institute come by the light? He says we got about 1 inch by the light. That's all we got. So again, for me, we pushed it back as far as we can. Then he looks top to bottom. How's it looking? Again, still 1 inch. I mean, good. So I start to place my magnets and just get it roughly in place. I have about 1 inch at the top, so you just can kind of form into that top groove. Pick it back up, and again, having the mirror and the door handles off makes a huge difference here. I feel through the front door and where the fender is, and then I go feel where the Muto is. And the Muto is almost off the car. There's the light, and I feel through here, but it's also really low. So I want to make sure I pick it up later. So again, just kind of tacking in place for now. And then I go over inside and I check to where the Muto comes from the hood. So obviously I want to make sure that they line up symmetrically. Even though there's no Muto on the other side of the hood, I want to make sure that where the green matches up on the fender is the same on both sides. So I go back to the driver's side, and I take a measurement there from the corner there, and I see that it's about 6 inches there, so I need to shift it back about, let's say, 3 inches or about 9 centimeters. So I make a mental note there. So that means that if I have to shift it back though, I come over here, and Carlos said I had 1 inch towards the light. With the back graphic here, I don't have that luxury, because here if I back it up 3 inches, then I'm going to, the wrap institute is going to go fully into the light there, which is not good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see in sections, not only with the vehicle, but the print, and you're going to see that in a second. The only graphic that has to be straight here is on the door, which is the Avery Dennison there. And this, again, could be any graphic, doesn't have to say Avery Dennison. So I make sure that it's 11 inches there, or 11 and a half. Make sure it's the same on both sides so it's straight. And once I'm in ballpark position, I love this water-soluble pen, where I'm just going to start making tick marks on key areas. So in case the panel shifts, I can quickly get repositioned. The water-soluble marker there is just really key for that. Now that I'm in position, I want to remove the excess film and give myself enough bleed, let's say about 6 inches, left to right, top and bottom. But again, saving it with the backing paper on. I can't emphasize this enough. So again, using a zippy here, pulling it across all the way to the back. And again, I'm going to show different ways to do the bumper area because the bumper is short. So again, just keep in mind that I'm cutting straight down as opposed to towards the wheel well like I normally do on other videos in the Wrap Institute. What's key here is the door handle on the back door is red. So I make sure I save this with the backing paper on. So again, always save that for later so I can match it up. And again, the door handles are off, so I don't have to do any inlays. Now that we're roughly in position, I want to make a temporary hinge. So for this case, I think a great temporary hinge on horizontal panels is I'm removing a half circle of the backing paper. So I tear a backing paper off and I tack it on the car because that just holds it nice and clean. Magnets can somehow shift, can often shift here. So again, like the half circle technique works great. And again, I could do this by myself, but again, working with Carlos is nice because he can just kind of make sure that the panel stays away. He's going to pull while I hold the film. Pulls it nice and clean. The floor is super clean. So again, you don't want any dirt on the floor because as we pull the backing paper off, that electrostatic charge will get in the material and suck dirt on there. Once we pull the backing paper off, just to the temporary hinge, we're going to swing it around just like a door. Carlos grabs it, and then I just make sure I keep the material from folding on itself. And then I just kind of lightly tack it in place. I don't want to pull too hard because if I pull too hard, it might shift that temporary hinge or stretch the material too much. The whole goal is to get the entire backing paper off. So once we're there, we're going to remove the rest of the backing paper. And if you noticed, I removed the green part at the front of the car where that Muto is. And there's a separate video on the Wrap Institute on this series that shows how you deal with that section where, remember, it came up about, I needed to go back about 3 inches. Again, I have a whole video just on that. And my goal right now is to just pull and create glass just to the point where we get the material roughly in position. So I'm kind of setting up to the water soluble marks there, kind of getting in position. Now before we do anything, before we haven't set our permanent hinge yet, I double check the measurements and we need to go up a little bit. So again, the front was dipping down, so Carlos and I pull it up a little bit. So again, the only part that has to be straight is the Avery Dennison. That's where the only focus we have right now is just making sure that graphic is straight. So I double check the measurements. So I measure from the bottom of the door, in this case, to the bottom of the D, bottom of the N, and that is straight. So once it's straight, this is my permanent hinge. I lock it in place. And what we're going to do is we're going to create an extra long permanent hinge where I'm going to pull in triangles and Carlos is going to pull straight. Material folded on itself a little bit, so I carefully pull it away. And again, normally this type of film is really dry, but as I said in the prelude in the very beginning of the DVDs of this video series, is I said that this material, this ink, was oversaturated. So wrong profile was used, so it's tending to kind of fold on itself and be extra sticky. Also, it stretches quite a bit. So you saw that there, kind of fold on itself, so immediately pull it apart if it folds. Now we're going to pull in triangles again. So we created our permanent hinge. Carlos pulls to his corner, I pull to mine, and we got instant glass. And once we have glass, we squeegee. Notice we're not kind of keeping the material away. Why on earth would we keep the material away when it's this easy to squeegee once we have glass? So I'm just rocking and rolling. I use the soft squeegee here to kind of work it into this recessed area. Great use of the soft squeegee there for those type of areas. And watch. Triangle again, where we pick it back up to the permanent hinge to create glass right there. The little folded on itself. I'm going to pull up and away, and Carlos is going to pull up and away, and that's going to create glass on that upper section there. So it's very straightforward. The material folded on itself a little bit, so I pull it apart, and now we just evenly pull apart, and bam, we have glass, nice and easy. it kind of folded up back there, so we pull again, just nice and easy. We work together, create glass. And again, we're stretching, but we're not overstretching. If we added heat there, we would definitely overstretch. But just by pulling cold in the shape of a triangle, create glass, and now that it's on, it just becomes all about just squeegeeing on. For this back section here, always it wants to fold on that corner, especially here at the bottom. So you want to create a relief cut. But again, notice how I said earlier that the material was oversaturated. Even though we were 1 inch from the light here, notice that even just by pulling it, because it was so saturated with ink, that it stretched and that now the rapacidity almost goes into the light. The P just comes short, which is great. But just by pulling the material, because it was oversaturated, it stretched about 1.5 inches by itself. That's not great, so definitely keep that in mind when you have oversaturated graphics. But I pull with the triangle there to neutralize the corner, do the corner first. Once I lock the corner in, after making that relief cut, look how easy it is right there. Again, no heat at this point because I've used relief cuts and triangles. That's really the key. Now I back it up and I'm going to spread the material out. I pull to the left, and now I'm going to pull to the right and straight, and look, bam, glass. And again, no need for heat. Again, it's not my goal not to use heat, but why would I need to use heat when I got good technique, great material, and relief cuts? Really important there. I'm relaxing the material onto the driver's side right now, as opposed to forcing it. At no point am I overstretching, and when the material gets to the edge, it's relaxed. That means for the long term, I have really good durability there because I'm not overstretching it. I'm not pushing it to the edge. I'm relaxing it to the edge. I'm going to use another triangle where I pull wide, pull up to the right and down towards the left, and it just flattens this area, and only when I have glass do I squeegee. Taking advantage of the air egress and repositionable technology of this particular film, and again, this is Avery Dennison, but most manufacturers have this technology in their adhesive today. Take advantage of it. Never squeegee as you go. Squeegee only when you got glass. So once all the material has been squeegeed onto the main surface, this is the only time you start to really truly cut the edges. So never cut anything out until the material is fully on the main surface area. I can't emphasize that enough, because if you need to pick it back up, if something jams, you can. If you cut it right away, you're kind of boxed in a corner. Now for this section here, we'll go to driver's side part 2 cutting, and you'll see how this driver's side is finished off entirely. Thanks for watching. Justin Pate.